Hello and welcome back to the 7th and final video in our training video series on how to use KYHMIS. In the last video we covered adding a new client into the household as well as the project and getting them established in the ROI section. And we also covered the annual assessment process. In this video we are going to complete the final phase of their participation in our program, in which we're going to exit all of the members, but we're going to do it in a way that will help you out in certain situations that you might run into in which some of the members of the household leave early. So in this case, we're going to fast forward, so we've still got a back date set to the annual assessment date of 12/1/2013. So let's move forward a bit to January 15th of 2014. Now on this date, we are going to say that the husband leaves his family. Okay? So the husband is going to leave. The wife and child are going to remain in the program and the household. So what we need to do is we need to start off by removing the husband from the project, and then we need to remove him from the household. After that, we need to make the wife the new head of household. So we'll start out on the Entry/Exit tab. We have everything set correctly up in the upper right. So I'm going to click the pencil by this empty box where the exit date column is. So when I do this, we get our checklist that you've seen everywhere else. We want to make sure that Fred is the only one selected because he's the only one leaving. The exit date pulls this date from whatever we're backdated to. So we have a list of options for reason for leaving. They can be things like criminal activity, or maybe they completed the program or step, death even, disagreement with rules or persons, etc. So I'm just going to say, let's just say disagreement with rules and persons. If other, then you can specify that there. For destination, we can choose a destination for him. In this situation, we're going to say that he leaves for a hotel or motel paid for without an emergency shelter voucher. As you can see, there are a lot of different options you can choose from in here. So just select the option that best fits the situation for your client. So I'm selecting hotel or motel paid for without emergency shelter voucher. It's always good, like I've always said before, to put in notes, put in detailed notes about what's going on. So I'm just saying husband left the family for, a motel, etc. You would want to be more detailed than that, but this is just an example. So I will hit save and continue, and this is going to take me to the exit assessment, which is going to serve as a snapshot of his situation at exit. Okay, so we've got just a few questions to answer here. We start out with housing assessment at exit. So there are several options. So he's moving to a hotel. Okay, so this is going to count as a transitional or temporary housing facility or program. Okay. Now the next question says, if able to maintain housing at entry, what is the subsidy information? Is it without a subsidy, with an ongoing subsidy, etc.? Well, we said that he was homeless at the time of project entry, so we can leave this blank. It doesn't apply. If moved to new housing unit, what's the subsidy information for that? Well, move to new housing unit is actually an option in the housing assessment at exit question, right here. But we didn't select that. So we don't have to answer this question either. It doesn't apply in this situation. If anything else happened here at the time of his exit, maybe he had, for example, like 10th child care services, something like that dealt with child care. Well, he would lose that at the time he's leaving his family. Okay, so you would have to close out that benefit here. Now, the way you do that is if he had it at the time that he left, then you would want to put an end date for that, example of a benefit or income or what have you. You would want to put an end date for the day after he leaves. This way, if the report looks at his exit date, it will see that on that date he had that type of income. Whereas if you end that type of income or benefit or whatever for the day that he leaves, it will say he did not have it at the time that he left. Okay? So We're not going to mess with any of that because none of it applies in this situation. So we're saying he still got his job at the time he leaves. He didn't have any benefits. He has his health insurance, and he has a disability, but nothing's changing with that. So we can hit save and exit. And it populates the exit date here. Now we need to go to the Households tab and remove him from the household because he's no longer in the household. So on the Households tab, the only way, again, that we can make changes here is to click the Manage Household button. And we have to do a couple of things. First, we have to go back and change this household type again. Now that he's leaving, this will now be a female single parent household. So I will save that. And I want to clarify something here because you see these red minus signs. Now these are used to remove a household member from the household. This is the proper way to do it. But I have seen cases where people have gone into this Add Delete Household Members box and they have used this trash can to remove someone from the household. But this, you have to be really careful not to do this. Now these do different things. The trash can, for example, completely deletes the history that he ever had a relationship with this household. So you obviously don't want to do that. Okay? Whereas the red minus sign here, this only removes him from the household but maintains his history that he used to be in that household. So I'm going to click Leave Household here. For Fred, it's going to populate his exit date for whatever we have our back date set to, which is January 15th, 2014. I'll hit save, and it takes him out of the household. We have to do one more thing, though. We have to set Wilma, the wife, as the new head of household. So in the head of household column, for Wilma, I'm selecting yes. It populates the relationship to self, and I will say save and exit. So now you will see this client is not currently a member of any households. We're still on Fred's record here. But if we expand the previous household section, we can see that he used to be part of this household. And while he was in there, he was the head of household, and this was the time frame that he was in there. Okay? Now that we're done with Fred, we can switch over to the new head of household. So I'm using the Switch to Another Household Member drop-down box, and I'm selecting Wilma. And I will click Submit. And she is now the current head of household. So, let's say that some time goes by and then Wilma and Pebbles end up leaving the program. So I'm going to change my back date, and let's just say that they leave on February 26th of 2014. Okay, so time passes, things are normal, and then let's say they just end up completing the program. You know, they finished their time that has been spent in the program, and it's time for them to exit. Now, they're going to exit the program together, but we're not going to take them out of the household because they are still a household. Even if we're not tracking their information anymore, they're still a household at the time they're leaving. So back on the Entry Exit tab again, I'm looking at Wilma's record. So we're going to go in and we're going to click the pencil by the exit date here. And this time I want to make sure that both of them are selected. I don't want to do an exit for Wilma and an exit for Pebbles separately. While this will show that they exited on the same date, it will not indicate that they exited together necessarily. So I want to make sure that we indicate that they exit together. Once again, the exit date populates from our back date. For reason for leaving, I will say they completed the program. For destination, let's say they actually end up owning a house, owning some kind of a home. So I will say owned by client with ongoing housing subsidy. So I will say wife and child move to a new home. Okay, once again, you just want to be detailed with your notes. So save and continue, and it'll take us to our exit assessment. Don't be confused by the fact that Fred is still showing up here. That's just normal. But one thing that's really important to note is don't forget to do the exit assessment for both, in this case, both Wilma and Pebbles. So we need to do it for Wilma, go to the bottom and save, and then go back to Pebbles and complete hers. I see this happen a lot, especially with new users. So housing assessment at exit for Wilma. I'm going to select Move to a New Housing Unit. The second question does not apply because they were homeless at the time of entry. If moved to a new housing unit, so that's what I selected, so I will have to answer this. What's the subsidy information? Well, if you look, we selected owned by client with ongoing housing subsidy. So you would select that option if they have some kind of a subsidy. So I will select with ongoing housing subsidy. So if she had any changes at the time of exit, we would log those now. So I will go to the bottom and hit save. Not save and exit because I'm not done yet. I will go up to the top. You'll see that it saved this information. You'll also notice that these boxes aren't very red anymore. They're more of a brown color. They're kind of in between that green and red phase. So we're answering this for 2/26/2014, which is just a little bit over a year from today's date. So they're not close enough to the present time to really appear green, but they're not far back enough to appear red. So it's kind of that in-between period. So you'll see this green check mark indicating that we've saved our changes. So now we can switch to Pebbles. And we're basically going to answer these the same way. Housing assessment at exit. They move to a new housing unit. We can skip the second question, and for if moved to new housing unit subsidy information, we will say with ongoing subsidy. Okay, so this completes the exit assessment for the child as well. So I can go down. I don't need to do anything else on this window in this case, so I will hit save and exit. And now we see that both Wilma here, she's got an exit date showing for 2/26/14, and if I change to Pebbles, Pebbles also has an exit date showing for 2/26/14. Now, this covers the full extent of this household's progression through our project. Every situation is going to be different, but I think you should be able to take a lot of details that we've gone over and really apply them to just about any situation that you come across. Of course, if you run into any problems, you can always ask us a question on our help desk. I will address these other tabs here. I didn't really cover these because they're not necessary to use. They're not required by HUD or anything like that. They're just there if you want to use them. The Case Managers tab, for example, you can assign case managers to these clients. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. You choose who is being assigned to this case manager. You can choose whether or not it's a service point user, what program area they're with, and their name and information, as well as their start and end date for being their case manager. You can also lay out case plans, so you can set goals for your clients. For example, if you want them to gain a job by the time that they leave your program, you can set that information up here. You can also add in file attachments for case plans. Same way we did before when uploading files. So you choose File, browse to the file on your system, and choose it and click Upload. Measurements. I haven't seen many providers that use measurements, but you can add a new measurement in here. You can select a SPDAT or an FSPDAT, etc., some kind of assessment that you want to use. We're not going to go into detail about any of this here, but this is where you can add some of that information in. And then assessments, what assessments does is you can break down the different assessments that are used. So you have an entry assessment, you have your update assessment, which is used for interims. This is showing two different exit assessments, one for prevention and one for emergency shelter, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing. This just really shows the different responses for all of the questions for this client. So it's just a way to look at everything kind of in one place, but really, this is mainly just used by system administrators to go in and correct issues if they occur. But that basically covers everything that we need to cover. Like I said, if you have any questions at any time, you can feel free to go to our help desk and ask. And we hope you found this video series informative. And thank you very much. Have a great day.